How do we get out of our own way and focus on the right now? That's what we're talking about on the podcast today with my guest, Brittany. Brittany and I met just over a year ago, and we instantly clicked because we had a lot of the same mentality and a lot of same perspective about different things in life. Today on the podcast, we are talking about how to not get in our own way and how to not kibosh our own success before we can even see it and achieve it. We're also talking about what happens when we become our own worst critic. You're going to love our conversation today because there's a lot of value that you can pull out here and a lot of ways that you can transform your own life based off of what Brittany and I speak about. Brittany's journey is marked by overcoming personal and professional challenges. Growing up in a family grappling with addiction, she learned the importance of resilience from an early age. The loss of her best friend, Kylie, to addiction in 2019 was a pivotal moment that ignited her entrepreneurial spirit, leading her to create a soap company that supported addiction recovery initiatives. In 2020, Brittany faced a significant challenge when she lost her sense of smell, compelling her to close her soap company. This period of adversity sparked deep self-reflection, leading her to realign with her true passions. Embracing her long-standing interest and expertise in the dental industry, she made the decision to follow her joy. This pivotal decision marked the birth of SKF Practice Solutions, a testament to her ability to thrive in the face of change. It was more than a business venture. It was a step towards aligning her professional path with her personal passions and strengths. Outside her professional endeavors, Brittany is a dedicated mother, a partner to an entrepreneurial husband, and enjoys baking, reading, and exploring life with her family. Her story, as you will hear some of today, is a powerful reminder of the strength found in embracing life's unpredictability, inspiring others to find their own paths of resilience and growth. So why don't we get into our conversation today with Brittany? Be sure to hit that subscribe so you never miss a conversation, and leave us 5 stars if you love what you hear. Thanks so much for tuning in. And now let's hear from Brittany. Brittany, welcome to Happiness Happens. I'm so excited to have you here today.
I'm so excited to be here.
You are, okay, I have to backstory for everybody before we get into our conversation. So Brittany and I met through a mastermind. It's called Skeleton Key. I've had a couple of people from the Skeleton Key mastermind on Happiness Happens in 2023, which were amazing conversations. And actually the guy who created it, Justin Shank, was also a guest on the podcast. So go back and listen to that one too. But when Brittany and I first met, there was something about your energy that just completely drew me in. And I was like, I need to be her friend.
Same. My husband was like, I saw it the minute you guys like locked eyes that you were going to be besties. I was like, oh.
100%. And then we went to Chicago, and then you had to drive me like an hour, whatever, 2 hours or whatever it was, like on your way home, because you were dropping me off somewhere else. And we talked for so long, and I was like, it just feels so nice to have people in your life and like in your circle that just understand you without judgment. And it was such a blessing to have that in my life, and especially in that point in my life when everyone was judgmental and you were like, girl, live your life.
I'm always there to be the hype friend and the supportive friend when it is in alignment with what you're doing. If you're like self-sabotaging, obviously I'll call you on that, but I'm the cheerleader friend for sure.
We love a cheerleader friend. You think about like the people that you want to have closest to you in your life, like who are the main people like in your life, and like what kind of people do you want to surround yourself with? You need a mix of everything, but the cheerleader friend, I think, is so crucial because we never celebrate ourselves enough. Would you agree?
100%. I am my own like worst critic, and I feel bad because I'm the same way for my husband. I'm like our harshest critic, but with like all my girlfriends, I'm like, yes, you got this, go girl. So,
but it's fun. True though, because it's like when you see potential. Okay, I'm going to digress real quick because there's one question that I always start every single interview off with, and I want to ask you that question, but we're going to come back to this piece of worst critic, and we are also going to talk about not getting in our own way in today's episode. So my very first question for you, and it's a question that I start every single episode off with, it's, what does happiness mean to you?
I was so prepared to answer this question. I actually like over prepared to answer this question because I knew it was your one question. And now that we're like in it and talking, I'm just going to like throw away my whole script and say what I'm feeling. So first and foremost, I kind of want to start with like 6 months ago, if you had me on and you asked me this question, it would be a very dramatically different answer. I would have said probably something like security and feeling safe and like having structure, all of these things that like don't actually sound like they would make me happy anyways. But now that I am in a different point in my life, I really feel like for me, happiness is the like art essentially of embracing what's going on right now and being able to kind of move with the ebbs and flows of life and knowing that at the end of the day, I am in alignment with my purpose. And because of that, the universe is going to support me and kind of guide me through whatever is going to happen. So understanding that there will be ups and downs, but being cool with that. Sounds great.
I want to ask you from that though, that is such a hard place to get yourself to, because I definitely resonate with the feelings of safety and security. And for me, for years and years, it always came back to financial safety and financial security, because I felt like without those things, there was no other type of security. But I quickly realized that those things can change fast, and still you can have a direct line to your purpose constantly. So what would your one tip be for grounding back to that place of being in this place of now and honoring the now and like being in the moment? Because people talk about being in the moment, but it's not actually easy to do.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't mastered it by any means. So if anybody's listening and they have the tip for mastering that, let me know. But when I find myself getting too far removed from the now or starting to feel anxious or stressed out about things that are just beyond my control and I know will be okay in the end, I like to separate myself from the situation and from any exterior factors that I can. So spend some time by myself, meditate, read, whatever I need to do, listen to music, so I can go internal instead of having to focus on all of the external that's going on.
I love that. And I want to ask you too, this is a bit of a side tangent thing, but I want to ask you, by doing that, by prioritizing yourself, by knowing that you need to ground back to yourself, how has that transformed how you show up as a business owner, a wife, and a mom?
I will say, as a wife and a mom, it makes me feel really guilty to request that time to myself. So that's a totally different set of battles that I have to play with. But I think it translates to just me being more present when I am there than having me be stressed and thinking about 100 things. I'm like, oh, wait, I got to have my laptop. It allows me just to be more present in those moments because I take those moments away for myself.
I really like that. And so, do you feel like other people have a different reaction to like life and situations and the stress of life and all of that because you're able to give yourself that moment of pause?
Good question. I think that internally, I feel like my husband and my kids are suffering in those moments because I'm taking the time away. But I do think it kind of comes back full circle when I am present. They're just so much happier that I'm around. So I do think it is fulfilling to them and to myself to have those moments because it kind of comes back full circle and I can't pour from an empty cup and all of that.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it. It's so true. So, bouncing off of this idea, I want to talk about being our own worst critic. I feel like in life in general, as human beings, as business owners, as parents, I'm not a parent, but you are, spouses, partners, whatever, we can very often be our own worst critic.
I could not agree more. I have always been my worst critic. And I find that like self-sabotage is something that I still have to balance the struggle with and try and not get in my own way because I am my own worst critic. I try and talk myself out of potential opportunities that I could have if I just got out of my own way.
That's so interesting. Okay. And so I want to know why you have that tendency, because I do have it as well. And I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are, because I know that our listener right now has the same tendency, because I think a lot of us have this like self-sabotaging moment that can derail us from where we want to go and where we should, like where we quote unquote should go. And we know what we should do. And we know that this X, Y, and Z thing will bring us a lot of joy and like happiness and whatever, but we don't do it.
I have kind of a long-winded answer for this one, so brace
Take it, sister.
yourself.
Take it, sister.
So for me personally, I have done a lot of like meditation and self-reflection on this specific topic because I do see it showing up a lot now that I am getting to be just a little bit more successful in my business. I find that it's popping up a lot more. So for me, I think it really stems back to my upbringing and my childhood and what that kind of looked like for me, and being in a family that both parents struggled with addiction, and there was constantly the people pleasing to try and get the attention, and just knowing where everyone that I was around growing up kind of wound up. I feel like trying to break those like generational curses or trying to break those patterns is something that I don't feel that I'm strong enough to do, even though I've demonstrated that I am. And so I keep trying to put myself back into the situation that I know and that I'm comfortable with, even though it doesn't bring me joy or happiness. It's just bringing myself back to a place that I know and that the rest of my family is in. I don't want to be the one that's like the outsider who acts different or does things differently. So I try and hold myself back, put myself in this smaller box so I fit kind of everybody else's version of who I should be.
I love that so much. And I feel like I've just had like a massive epiphany while you were saying that, because I come from a family who it was a very like it was an amazing family. Like I grew up really great. Like we had a lot, we had everything we needed when we were growing up. And still, there's always something in every family, I feel like, that, I think it's like our own human journey and it's our own personal journey that no matter how we were brought up, like you're still not going to feel 100% confident about yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like you're still not going to feel good enough because there's stories and there's layers. So like even though, maybe you're listening to this and you come from, a home where there wasn't drugs and alcohol or anything like that. And well, we had a little bit of alcohol in our family, let's be honest. But but that said, maybe you come from a family that, you were like super well off and you had everything that you needed. There's still those patterns and those stories that are passed on about who and how you are and how they're like completely infiltrated into how you grow up. And I think it's really important to like remember that we are all in some ways like a product of like our circumstance, but it also is not, we don't necessarily have to stay there. And what you said about like, being that outsider, it's like as human beings, we want to fit in. And then like you go and you change too much. And I remember like, okay, so I'll tell you, like when I was going through my separation and like eventual divorce, which is surprise, I haven't really talked about on the podcast. I felt like an outsider who does things differently. And I remember apologizing to my ex and I said, I'm so sorry for growing too much. And I genuinely felt that. Like I was like, I'm so sorry for growing too much, because like sometimes you outgrow different things. What do you think?
I have so many things that I want to say now.
Say
You triggered
everything.
so many
Say
micro
all of the
thoughts.
things.
So first of all, brave of you to be talking about it publicly now. I am proud of you. That's a huge step.
Thank you.
Second of all, I love that you're a kind-hearted person and would apologize for outgrowing your current phase. However, don't apologize for being the best version of yourself. Don't sell yourself short. So
Can we
just
talk about
advice.
people
Yeah.
pleaser tendencies coming in hot, or
Yeah, we both may have a thing.
maybe a little something there?
Yeah. And then you said something while you were talking about like, as long as you don't stay there, like everybody's got their situation. And as long as you don't stay in that position, or like you can't have that be your excuse or your fallback. And it made me think of a story. So I'm just going to tell you a really brief story. My dad is in prison currently because of circumstances that came from his drug addiction. So, but one thing that I remember is when he was getting sentenced, they asked us all to write these letters to give to the judge so they could like give him leniency for his sentence, which in hindsight, that's a whole other soapbox on that. But my
It's part two on the podcast.
Yeah, right. My uncle wrote this huge letter. It was like 14 pages long of all these like unfortunate circumstances that my dad went through. And they are like, I tell him every day he should write a book. They are heartbreaking and they are traumatic and they are sad. But when the judge read his letter, he was like, I can't even put into words how sorry I am for you that that was your experience. But at some point in time, you have to realize that you're 30 something years old now, and that does not get to be your excuse for being a bad person anymore. And that moment, I was like 19 when this happened. And I was like, whoa, wake up call. And that is where like everything started to kind of shift and change for me in my entire life, because some random judge said that to my dad after reading his letter. And I was like, excuse
That's
me.
crazy. How old were you when that happened?
I want to say 19 or 20. My dad was in and out of prison a little bit
Mm.
growing up. So the timelines get a little sketchy, but I was like 19, 20 years old at that time.
Wow. That's a big realization to have at, such a young age. And I would say, like, just from the conversations that you and I have had and the things that you experienced in your life growing up, like, it's not easy to change your life. Like, it is not easy to take that step into entrepreneurship. It's not easy to build a business and to like bet on yourself and to continuously show up for yourself because it's so easy to go back to that pattern of comfort because it's what you know, not you, not a specific you, but like a general you. It's what you know and it's what feels safe for you. So again, back to that idea of safety, of what even is safety. Is it even real or do we construct it in our minds?
Oh, I totally think we construct it in our minds. My version of safety, like when I was at different phases in my life, has looked incredibly different. Like places that I used to live and feel safe as my home every day, and I would go to
Mm.
bed there. Like I wouldn't even drive down those streets
Oh.
anymore. So like just like physical safety, even my idea of that has changed a lot.
Mm.
And just like mental and protecting my space type of safety. What is security? What do I feel comfortable with? That has grown as I have grown and it's evolved over time too. So I definitely think that's all about your perspective and your viewpoint.
I love that so much. And I want to talk a little bit more about this idea of not getting in our own way. What would you say right now to someone who, like myself, is constantly getting in, our own way, in my own way, and self-sabotaging opportunities for fear of success, which is completely wild to me. But
I agree. When I look at it from the outside, it is
like
so
what?
weird. Like, why do I do that? But I know for me, what tends to kind of push me in the right direction is like at this point, I've come so far in my own personal story that like,
Mm,
what's the worst that can happen? I already have a failed business under my belt. I've already lived in terrible places. I've already been paying for gas and quarters that I find under my car seat. Like I've already been in all those places. I know how to live in that environment. So if all hell breaks loose and I wind up there again, fine. I can rebuild, I can do it again. So the worst thing that could possibly happen is I could get rejected or I could
mm.
fail. So be it. Let's try this again then.
I love that so much because it's a resilience that you only learn from hitting those really hard pieces in life. And I think that there is a fear of rebuilding. But what do you think before I keep talking and don't stop talking? No, I'm just kidding.
No, don't stop talking. But I totally agree that fear of rebuilding, like even when my first business failed, I was like, okay, well, everybody who was watching me and like rooting for me to fail, which was also something I made up in my head, they got their way and now I failed. So now what? And then I was afraid to try the next thing until I did. And then you just keep doing things that make you super uncomfortable until it's not uncomfortable to be uncomfortable anymore.
Yeah. What was that thing that pushed you to start the second business where you are today?
The story is not as like romantic and wonderful as I would like it to be. I went into my job at the time and it was a relatively new position I was in. I was super excited when I took the role, quickly learned it wasn't a culture fit for me. Came into my job one day and like was bombarded the moment I walked in the door and like my superiors were yelling at me.
No, literally 100%.
Exactly. I'm like, I am too old for this and I don't get paid enough for this. No, thank you. So I left and rage quit my job. That is the only time I have ever quit a job without notice. And like I was incredibly emotional when I did it. I was like tears in my eyes. I was like, yo, I'm not doing this. And I left. And it was like right before Christmas. And it was in a point in my husband is also an entrepreneur. When he was building his business, it was in a point where like how are we going to pay our electric bill now? Like, I was scared. So I had been kind of dabbling with this idea of like, here, I know my skill set and I know that I'm in love with the industry that I'm in, and I know
Yeah.
how I can potentially use that to help other practices. And at that moment, when I was like, everything, there's like no other, I can't go down any further. So let's try this whim of an idea. And
Proudest thing.
that's how my new business started, and that's I mean, it's been working out really well. So the universe was strongly encouraging me to leave that position by literally forcing me every second along the way to leave that position.
Okay, but that's incredible. So can we talk about those little nudges from the universe that we get and like how we can choose to respond to them and also choose not to respond to them? But if we don't pay attention, it comes in a big way.
Yeah, it's like at first, like you got me onto angel numbers, and now I pay attention to them regularly. And it's like a whisper at first, where it's like, "Hey, you should do that thing. Hey, you should do that thing." And then all of a sudden,
Mhm.
it's like an earthquake, and it's like, if you don't do this thing, dude, like, what are you doing? I've been telling you this whole time, do the thing.
Mhm.
So they become less gentle of nudges if you continue to ignore them, because there is a path for you, and you know it inside, and your fear and your limiting beliefs and all your self-doubt and all your self-sabotage, that all gets in the way. But eventually, like, if you just stop fighting it, life
Hmm.
is a lot better.
It's so true. I can think back to so many different like moments in my life where the universe was like, okay, you need to listen, you need to pay attention, do this, don't do this. And it like it can show up in so many different ways. In the most like recent example I can probably share, like well, when I was in corporate, it showed up all the time. It was like that was a horrible like I honestly, if the pandemic did not force me out of my job, I probably would have rage quit my job also. But that small piece of like financial security of like, oh, I really got to pay my bills. I got nothing to fall back on. Like, there's not, you know what I mean? Like, there's nothing. Yeah. So there was that. And then the universe was like, here, you know what I mean? Like, pay attention. But that said, it always gives you signs and symbols. And so, for example, for me, for like the last, I want to say like year, yeah, maybe about like the last year, I started getting like acne all over my face. I've never had that in my life. And once I started listening to the universe, it literally went away. And like some people could chalk it up to a coincidence, but I don't. I look at that as, you know, you have an actual body response to the situation that you're in your life and like the amount of stress that's in your life, the you know, the people that you're surrounded by in your life, the situations that you're in and all of that stuff, I think is so important to listen and to pay attention. Yeah. What do you think?
Completely agree. I mean, like anything that's causing you stress or like friction in your life is going to physically manifest in some way, shape, or form, right? Like stomach ulcers, acne, joint pain, all of that stuff is like scientifically proven to be correlated to stress. And stress comes from when you're not in alignment with where you're supposed to be. So
Mhm.
it makes perfect sense. You have acne, I have back pain when I'm not listening to what I'm supposed to be doing.
Interesting. That's really like it's like frustrating, but like also like that's really cool. And how cool is it that you're actually so in tune with yourself that you know exactly what those different signs are and you're like, "Oh, okay, out of alignment, let me drop back in and go back to all of the tools that you were talking about before." That's
For
I
sure.
love that. I love that. Okay, tell me your favorite part about the life that you are creating right now.
Ooh, that's a fantastic question. For me, right now, if I'm being totally honest, the best part is the journey of it. Like
Mm.
I'm you mentioned it before, we're in a mastermind together. I'm getting to, I'm an introverted person. I don't typically tend to be super social butterfly and get out and do things that make me uncomfortable with other people. So the journey of getting to push myself out of my comfort zone, get comfortable with that, meet people I would have never in a million years met. And these people are fantastic. The relationships I've built, the experiences that I've had, the places that I've been, all of that has been just, if I look back 5 years ago, I would not have believed that this was going to be my life. And I'm not done yet. And that part's also really cool.
I just got full body shivers when you said that. You're like, I'm just getting started. No, but
Hmm.
it's true. And like, I think that we can pigeonhole ourselves all the time into so many different things of like why we shouldn't do something. But something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is this idea, especially when I get overwhelmed with life and overwhelmed with all the things that are happening and going on. I always think to myself, we literally live on a blue spinning globe in the middle of nowhere. Like, what?
Yeah.
Why not try?
I have a sticker that says something along those lines on the back of my laptop, and I look at it regularly because, like, we are on a speck in the middle of the galaxy. Like, go for
Yeah,
it.
go for it. And the worst thing that you're going to do is fall. The worst thing you're going to do is you're going to hear a no. The worst thing that's going to happen is you might hit a rock bottom, but then you have an opportunity to rebuild. But I think there's a key piece that we haven't really touched on yet is the people that surround us to help lift us back up when we hit those places. Because even though it can feel lonely, and let me tell you, girl, like I felt alone in 2023, but I was never alone, you know?
Totally agree. And relationship building is one of the things that has kept me going through all of the hard things. Like I have a great group of people in my corner that I can reach out to when I need advice or when I need encouragement. Obviously, there are some people I reach out to for encouragement and some that I don't, because some of them are a little tougher love than the others. But
we gotta pick no, I'm just kidding.
I know that I text that person when I'm trying to do something dumb, and I text my other friend when I need like, you got this. When I need my rah-rah friend, I know who to text. So yeah, I completely agree. Relationship building is like key to being able to control, like to being in alignment and being able to chase those goals. You have to have a group of people in your corner who can support you through that. And one thing that I struggled with during like my first business and starting to even grow this one is like, I don't live in a place where everybody's an entrepreneur and we have these entrepreneur meetups and people have podcasts. And like, I live in rural Wisconsin. Like we have cows and cheese and beer, and that's about it. So unless my cows want to join my mastermind, I had to think outside the box a little bit. And COVID and Zoom and all of that really made all of this possible, because I have I consider you one of my close friends, and we would have never met with you being so far away. And like our circles, we don't have mutual friends. If it wasn't for having digital relationships and things like the mastermind that support us through these changes.
I love that so much. I consider you one of my close friends too. And I love that the best types of friendship, I think, are the ones where it's like, you don't always have to talk every single day, but you can check in here and there and be like, hey, thinking of you, or hey, like this and this, or whatever. Like you even downloaded WhatsApp for me, okay? So that we could talk. Like, let's just talk about that. That's
And
love.
Boxer, you got two apps out of me.
I've got 2 apps. I got 2 spots in your heart. The one thing I wanted to say, especially because like I live in a small town also in like Grimsby, Ontario. It's like in between bigger towns. So like, yeah, there's like, you can drive out, but it takes a couple hours to go into the city or whatever. One thing that I like is that there's like a certain element of like grounding. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, even though like the bigger cities and whatever, they all have like, there's so much more like quote unquote opportunity, because like, yeah, there's more meetups and there's more people and there's more stuff going on. But there's something about being kind of in the middle of nowhere that is super grounding, that keeps you humble, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I still live in rural Wisconsin, even though I know that there are more opportunities in other areas for me to like expand my career, make more friends, do meetups, all those things. I still live here because I do love it. I love that I live in a small town and we have this type of community that we're new to our small town. So we have to pour into our community a little bit to become a part of it. But I love that we have that opportunity. Like when I go to the grocery store and the like cashier knows everybody in line in front of me and they're like talking and stuff, I'm like, that's adorable.
It is.
And I want that so bad, because my chaotic upbringing, I'm like, give me the stability just a little, like give me something that I can fall back on. So I love the small town vibe.
I love that so much. And you're like, hi, my name is Brittany. I live up the street. Hi, this is my grocery order today. And they're like, huh? Like, I'm just kidding. I'm just joking.
Lady, please leave me alone.
They're like, ma'am, I don't know. Okay, I have one more question for you. But before I ask you this last question, can you please share with my listener where they can find you so they can connect with you?
Yeah, for sure. So I am SKF Practice Solutions on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of the places. I'm also super excited to be launching a podcast on January 8th called Dental Decoders. So if you or anyone you know is in the dental space, definitely check out that podcast. We're also Dental Decoders on all the social medias as well.
Love that. I love that. Okay, Brittany, my last question for you. It's a question I've been asking for 3 years on my podcast. I sometimes get the same answer, but sometimes I don't. What is one way that my listener can create a little more happiness in their day, every day, starting today?
Well, I mean, the obvious answer is to listen to this podcast.
Oh, no one's ever said that before.
Okay, well, you had the wrong guess. Just kidding. But But definitely, I mean, plug into the tools that you have at your disposal. I mean, we live in such a beautiful digital age where you can find everything that you need. So find something that makes you feel joy, whether it be listening to a podcast, reading a book, baking sourdough bread is my new thing. Whatever that is, and just make sure you make time for it. Put it in your phone calendar. Today I'm spending 20 minutes reading a book and listening to Simona's podcast.
I love that. I love that. Emphasis on the follow, rate, review, subscribe of the podcast. No, I'm just kidding. Brittany, thank you so much for joining me today. I love chatting with you and I loved our conversation.
Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode on the Happiness Happens podcast. Be sure to connect with both of us to let us know what you love from our conversation and send us a message just to see if there's any takeaways that you are feeling inspired to share all about. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope you have an amazing week ahead. And remember that happiness happens when you're least expecting it.